begin the current Daf Mesech is Beya, Daf Gimel. We begin 6 lines down at the top of the Yomim. The Gemara continues the discussion of the 4 different interpretations that we had for this opening halacha of this parak of this Masechta of Beya Shnol de Yom Tov. Why is it that the egg is laid on Yom Tov? Would Beis Hillel hold, and with Machlekes of Beis Shammai, that it's going to be usher to use it and to eat it on Yom Tov. This corresponds to the Daf. We're joining us today's Daf. Some things we're going to discuss in today's Daf are, as we said, the Gemara continues this discussion of Beya Shnol de Yom Tov, pressed dates of Truma, which became mixed with dates of Chulin, what the halachic status of that Taravis, of that mixture is regarding the laws of Bittul. So the key terms of concept we're discussing today's Daf are the well-known concept of Savik Deres L'chuma, when you have a doubt regarding biblical law, we go stringently. Savik Deres L'kula, when you have a doubt regarding rabbinic law, we go leniently. Bittul is the halacha of nullification, when you have a mixture and you have a certain ratio of the forbidden item and permitted items, it's going to be nullified and it's going to be permitted. However, 2 exceptions to this rule of rabbinic law is davar sheyesh matir, and something that has a permitted way out, which it's, for example, if let's say you have tevel. Tevel is a forbidden item, but there's a way to permit it by taking the trumas and meiser. So although you have, let's say, tevel mixed into chulin items, we're not going to say halacha of bittul. And even our fill elf light bulb, even though 1,000 not going to nullify, because why should we do nullification and take the prohibited item and say, oh, we're going to nullify, when you could actually make it permitted itself, because you could just take up trumas and meisers. Another one is davar chashav light bulb, something that's very significant. It's chashav, you can't say it's nullified. It's always there, and therefore there will not be halacha bittul. So begin the current Daf Gimel, 6 lines down at the top of the Yomim. A quick review, which is really open in the first word of Kulu. All of them. All of them is referring to the 4 different interpretations we had said on the previous Daf. We mentioned the opening halacha of this Masechta. The Masechta is called Beya Shnol de Yom Tov. You have a chicken that laid an egg on Yom Tov. When the Machlekes Beis Shammai said, you could eat the egg, still said you cannot eat the egg. What's the understanding of this Machlekes? We had 4 different interpretations. We had Rav Nachman, who said that the Machlekes was regarding Muktzah. Rabbi Shloimy holds there's no muktzah and there's no noilid, and therefore, okay, there's no problem. What's the problem with the egg? Beis Hillel held that no, there's muktzah, there's noilid. That's a halachic problem, like Rabbi Yehuda, as we rule him in the laws of Yom Tov, as we said. Rava said, oh, we're talking about when Yom Tov is on Sunday after Shabbos, and there's a halacha of hachana, v'hechines hashiyaviu, has to be prepared according to Beis Hillel. Rabbi Shloimy holds that no. That's their machlekes. If it has to be prepared, and it wasn't prepared because the egg was finished on the previous day on Shabbos. Third interpretation, Rabbi Yosef said, oh, it's a gzeira sheberes hanoisher. The halacha is you're not allowed to use fruits that fell off a tree on Shabbos because you might come to tear it off. Including that gzeira was an egg that is laid. It's similar, like a produce falling out from where it was originally attached. And Yitzchak says it's because gzeira mashkin shazava, which is a similar type of a concept of comparison, which is when you have fruits and then the juice like seeped out. You're not allowed to drink those fruits, those juice on Shabbos because you like that juice. You might come to squeeze out that fruit. Therefore, you can't have that juice. Similar to an egg is a similar, including that rubric of that gezerah, and therefore that's why it was forbidden. Those are the 4 interpretations we had. So that's why Gemara says, Kulu, all of them. This Rabbi that says the reason of the mission because of Achana, and Rabbi Yosef who holds because of Pesach Nation, and Yitzchak goes Mashkin Shazavu, where they explained it because of Gzeira. We understand why Rav Nachman lo Amri. We understand why they didn't say like the opening interpretation of our Gemara of this Masechta from the previous Daf. He said that we were talking about that the chicken was designated to lay eggs and not for eating, so the chicken is muktzah. And then we said, okay, so then the egg is also not prepared, and it's going to be a problem about noilid. We know why we didn't say like his interpretation why the egg that's laid is forbidden, because kikushim, like the question we had asked on the previous Daf, where the question was posed as, okay, even if you're right, why they only disagree regarding the egg, you should have disagreed also regarding the chicken. Really, that's the primary thing. The chicken itself is not prepared for Yom Tov use. It wasn't designated for shchita, for slaughtering. It was made to lay eggs, and therefore we said the egg is not like a slice of bread off a loaf of bread. So then we said, oh, so the egg wasn't prepared either. Then it's going to be a problem. But we said, okay, say hiu beitzasa, say the machlek is regarding the egg and the mother. So that's why we don't say like Rav Nachman, because else why would we talk about specifically the egg and not regarding the mother too? Okay, that's 1 out of 4. Also, why we know we didn't say like the second interpretation that was said by Rabba, because hachana lesahu. The other opinions don't hold to the biblical halacha of hachana. We know we treat muktzah as rabbinic. Rabba has this big chiddush that that's a biblical halacha. Ella, but now the question, however, is regarding the last 2 interpretations. Rav Yosef, my time Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yisrael and Rabbi Yitzchak both say they're included in Gezeirus D'Rabbanan. So now we want to know each one. Why doesn't it say like the other one? Why don't you say like Rabbi Yitzchak? He said it's because of mashkin shezavu. Well, isn't it similar to the liquids that come out of a fruit? Isn't that what, like an egg coming out of a chicken really is? So why is it any different than what you're saying of Peiros HaNoshim? They're very similar ideas. So Amalach, he would tell you no. Beya, this case that we're discussing here in our Mishnah, we're getting a laid egg. What is a beya? It's a uchla. It's a food item. It's a food. Upeiros uchla. The comparative gezer that I'm including in the Peiros HaNoshim, fruits that came detached, is also a food item. Lafuki mashkin. That excludes a liquid beverage of mashkin shezavu. It's not a food item. So therefore, when the gezerah was made on mashkin shezavu, you can't tell me that included an egg because it's not a liquid. Again, if you recall from the previous daf, really the Beitzah Daf has nothing to do with mashkin shezavu, Peiros HaNoshim. It's not even, you don't even have the gezerah there. You're not going to squeeze out a chicken to get the egg. You're not going to tear off the egg from the chicken. It just, we said, it was included in the gezerah. When you're about to make a gezerah, it includes everything in that category. So it's like a pri hanosh. It's like a mashkin shazov. You say it's not a mashkin shazov. It's not a liquid. And so how can you include a mashkin shazov? But it is included in Peiros HaNoshim because it's a pri. It's the pri of the Tarnagoylis. Oh, so fine. Then says the Gemara of Rabbi Yitzchak, my Talmud of Rabbi Yosef. So why doesn't he, the other mandam, the one who says mashkin shazov, why doesn't he hold like Rabbi Yosef that it's a pri? Why doesn't he include it in Peiros HaNoshim? So Malachi would tell you, I'll tell you why. The beya, the egg, is beluo. It's absorbed inside the chicken. Then it flows to the outside. Now, umashkin, liquids in a fruit, are also bluin. They're absorbed in the grape peel and they flow outside. So they're very similar to the zavu part, that it's absorbed in something and it's flowing out. But lafuki peiros, how could you compare it to the case of Peiros HaNoshim, to fruits that fall off a tree, that you tell me you can't eat it's gezerah because you might come to tear it off the tree? The miglu v'kaimu, where it's exposed and it's out there. In other words, so therefore, when you told me that when a fruit falls off a tree, it's going to be usher, you cannot tell me that includes the falling off of the egg, because an egg is belua, an egg is absorbed. Here, it's revealed, so something is out there in the open, so you can understand that a guy would come to tear it off. But this, of the egg, it's not contained. Rather, by the fruit, it's exposed on the tree. That's different than the case of the Beitzah Daf, and that's why he doesn't like his interpretation. And again, that's why they both learn it out from a different Gzer Draban. Now, says the Gemara, V'af Rabbi Yochanan Savan. Rabbi Yochanan also holds like Rabbi Yitzchak, that this of the Beitzah Daf, the why it's forbidden on Yom Tov, is a Gzer Shemashkin Shezavu. He picks like Rabbi Yitzchak, not like the other opinion of Rabbi Yosef, rather because it's included in the category of liquids that flowed out of a fruit. Where do we find this? So it's a little bit of a complex raya to show that Rabbi Yochanan holds like this. It says the Gemara like this: the Rabbi Yochanan Rami did Rabbi Yehuda umeshani. There's a little background to show that Rabbi Yochanan held like Rabbi Yitzchak, that he held the Beitzah Daf is forbidden because of Mashkin Shazava, because he had posed a contradiction to Rabbi Yehuda umeshani and he answered it. And what was this contradiction? As follows. It's none. First he quoted Mishnah Masechta Shabbos. Mishnah says, "In seichetin nesad peiros." You're not allowed to squeeze out fruits, lahitzim and mashkin, to get the liquids out of fruit. You know that's the malacha of dash, of mefarik, of squeezing it out. Now let's say the fruit juices came out on their own. So asurin, it's going to be forbidden that day to use it because of a gezerah. If we let you take the fruit juices, you might come to squeeze it out and be over on schita. Rabbi Yehuda, he says, well, it depends. If the reason why these, let's say grapes, were gathered in the bowl was for a purpose of eating them, then hayitzim and mutu. Actually, the juices that are going to come out are going to be permitted to use that same day. Why? Because you don't really want the juice. You wanted to eat these fruits. So there's no gezer, you might come to squeeze it out, because that wasn't why you had it here in the bowl. You had it here to eat. So then actually the juice that comes out is going to be permitted. Now, the reason why you had it in the bowl was because you wanted the juices, you were going to make grape juice. Okay, then what comes out is asa, because you wanted the juice. You might come to decide to squeeze out. This is your squeeze bowl. You know, that's what you put in your juicer. You know, the juice bowl, you have these fruits ready to make your concoction in your contigo that you're drinking. It is fruit shake your wife made for you. So that's in that juice bowl. So that's going to be forbidden. Okay. But one thing says the Gemara, this was part of Rabbi Yochanan's question. Obviously, you see, from the fact that Rabbi Yehuda says that if the fruits are there for eating purposes, what comes out is going to be permitted. Obviously, kol oichalin, which the Gersa is really lo oichalin. Whatever fruits are for eating purposes, Rabbi Yehuda, he says whatever comes out from them is uchla de ifrasu. It's really, and we said this terminology on the previous daf, it's like a food that's being cut off from another food. Meaning, we don't consider this as a gzeira of mashkin shazavu, of, oh, the liquids are coming out, you might come to squeeze it. No, it's like, it's part of the fruit itself. It's like cutting a grape in half and eating half of a grape. There's no problem with that. The juice that comes out, I don't want the juice. It's like a piece of the grape. So therefore, there's no problem about gzeira of schita, because I don't want the schita, I don't want the juice, I want to eat it. So therefore, it's going to be permitted according to Yehuda. Okay, if that's the premise, v'deminu. But that's where the contradiction starts. There's a Mishnah, which, as Rashi gives the background, the previous Mishnah within Masechtas Eruvin said that, let's say it's Rosh Hashanah, it's coming up, and the person was afraid that for some reason, I guess he had reason to be concerned, that maybe they're going to make it into Chodesh Me'uber. They're going to make El, not 29 days, they're going to make El into 30 days. Now what's going to happen that way is that Rosh Hashanah is going to become 2 days of Yom Tov, which really Rosh Hashanah is 1 day, and they're going to make it into 2 days. So what he could do is, the Mishnah teaches in Eruvin, he can make 2 Eruvin. He can make an Erev, meaning he wants to go somewhere Rosh Hashanah. The Rebbe is going to be somewhere, or he has his mom or his cousin, whatever it is. He wants to go somewhere Rosh Hashanah, first day and second day. So, but the problem is, first day Yom Tov wants to go to the Chakatav Rebbe, and the second day wants to go to the Bigaleg Rebbe. And they're on 2 other ways from where his town is, so it's going to be very hard. So what he could do is he can make an Erev one direction on the first day Yom Tov, and the second Yom Tov he can make Erev the other direction. Why? Because that Tana holds that the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah are 2 different Kedushas. One is considered as weekday, one's considered as Yom Tov. We just don't know which one's weekday, which one's Yom Tov. Rosh Hashanah is only 1 day. But since we don't know, we treat one as Yom Tov and one as the weekday. But be that as may, you're not tied down 1 day to the next day. That's what that Tana there is talking about. We'll actually discuss this later on in this Masechta. But Oidam Rabbi Yehuda. Now this is a continuation on that theme. And also Rabbi Yehuda says that not only, like I told you regarding the laws of Eruvin, that the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah are not the same. It's not like what's called Yomai. It's not 1 long day and you don't have the same sanctity. No, 1 day, we don't know which one's Yom Tov, one's Wednesday, but they're not tied down. Obviously 1 day is going to be, you could go the other direction because either this is the weekday or this is the Yom Tov, but this is the only day that you need the Erev for. So 1 day is not tied down to the next. So again, because 2 Kedushas. So this is where the theme is continuing. Additionally, Yehuda says, I'll tell you another application of this halacha, that the 2 days of Yom Tov have 2 different sanctities, so that they're not dependent one on the other, which is, Masna Adam, a person could stipulate, he can make a condition, al kalkala shal pears. He has a basket of pears of tevel, as Rashi explains, that it's untyped produce. Now he forgot, and he didn't take maïsis before Yom Tov. Now that is a big problem, because you're not allowed to take off trumas and maïsis on Yom Tov. So what do? You want to eat this fruit, but it's tevel, but I can't take off trumas and maïsis. So you can make the following condition. What you do is like this. You take off maïser b'Yom Tov Rishon. The first day of Yom Tov, you make a condition. You say like this. If today is really the weekday, and tomorrow is really Rosh Hashanah, so today's weekday. So I'm going to take off trumas and maïsis right now from this on this. Now, if let's say today's really Rosh Hashanah, so obviously what I'm saying has no significance because I'm not allowed to take off trumas and maïsis. So it'll be like I didn't do anything. But he puts a simon, he picks a sign to show what it is that he had made the hafrasha. Tomorrow, the second day, again he goes back and he says, okay, if today's weekday and yesterday was really the holy day, so then, okay, today's weekday, so I'm taking off trumas from this on the rest. Now, if today's really Rosh Hashanah and yesterday was weekday, okay, then yesterday already I did the trumas and maïsis, and my mother either way, second day Rosh Hashanah, you can enjoy those fruits. That's what says Rabbi Yehuda. You can go ahead, and you can eat on the second day Yom Tov. Now, obviously, like Rashi points out, you can't eat on the first day Yom Tov, because that might be the Rosh Hashanah day, and obviously what you're saying has no significance. But the second day, either way, is this the weekday or yesterday was the weekday, I'm good to go for today. I can have those fruits on the second day. Now, so too, I'll tell you another application. Regarding an egg, the same thing is that the 2 days Rosh Hashanah have 2 different sanctities. One's weekday, one's Yom Tov, and therefore, Shanod the Berishin. The egg was laid on the first day, You could have the scrambled eggs that you're making on the second day Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah, or you could use it for that cake that you need the egg whites for, whatever it is, you could do it on the second day. Oh, it says the Gemara, and this is Rabbi Yochanan's question. B'sheni in sounds like that on the second day Yom Tov you could use the egg. B'rishon loy, on the first day not. As Rashi explains a little bit very fine the Gemara's question. Wait a second, obviously, whatever flows from its place on Yom Tov, even if it is a oichla, a food item, is going to be asur. Wait a second. You just told me in the previous Mishnah that you quoted Masechta Shabbos. Then why does Rabbi Yehuda tell me that when you have mashkin shazavu, when you have liquids coming out of grapes, you told me that if he put it in the bowl for eating purposes, you told me the juices that come out, it's okay. You could drink you could drink those. Why? Aren't you concerned for schita? No, it's uchla da'ufrasu. It's just like it's a food item. It's like a grape. It's like you cut a piece off the grape and now you're going to eat that. That's what the juice is like. And the oichel, you won't have a concern of mashkin shazavu. You're not concerned that you're going to come to squeeze it out because it's not really like mashkin even. You don't even want the mashkin. We could look at it like a food item. But look at this Mishnah that you're quoting from Eruvin. You're telling me that the egg that was laid on the first day Rishon is permitted the second day. Okay, fine. What's with the first day? Temptation, all this is going to be asur. Why is it asur? And this is going to prove that Rabbi Yochanan, who's asking the question, obviously holds like Rabbi Yitzchak, and Rashi is already alluding to that because it's shazavu, because this egg flowed out of the chicken, and they're like, oh, it's a mashkin shazavu. Mashkin shazavu. What's nice mashkin shazavu? It's not a mashka. It's an oichla. It's a food item. So what's the problem over here? Why are you saying it's asur? Why is the Beis Hillel asur on the first day Yom Tov? Rabbi Yochanan answered, Mochlefes Hashita. You're right. It's a mistake. You have to switch around the opinions. The first Mishnah of Masechta Shabbos that we quoted, that Yehuda was said that you, regarding the schita thing, you have to switch around Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbana. You have to say actually Rabbi Yehuda was the more machmer shita, and that even if it was gathered that the fruits were for eating purposes, he was the one that said that the juice is going to be forbidden. So you see that even if it's a food item, which is like what it is, if you get it food, he is the machmer. You have to switch it around. It's a mistake. He was the one who said that it is going to be us. Oh, so that's the same thing like the egg. That's like a food item that's flowing out of something. We're going to say it's forbidden as the gezerah of mashkin shazav. It's not only mashkin, it's even a food item. But says the Gemara, and this is the proof, from the fact that Rabbi Yochanan posed this as a contradiction, what was he comparing? He was comparing mashkin shazavu, liquids that flow out of a fruit, to an egg being laid on Yom Tov. No, obviously, chataimu. Obviously, it's the same rationale, it's the same reasoning. Whoever says it's forbidden by the mashkin shazavu is the one who says it's forbidden by the egg being laid. And whoever holds it's permitted will hold it's permitted. That's exactly like Rabbi Yitzchak, who holds that we compare the Beis Shenolda to the mashkin shazavu. Why, isn't this a liquid? Yeah, but the concept is that they were both absorbed in something, and now it's flowing out. So therefore, we see that Rabbi Yochanan, from his kasha, we see it's like a very complex raya to show. But from his kasha, that he's comparing these two halachas of Rabbi Yehuda, that he has to end up saying Machlevas Hashita, we see then he is like Rabbi Yitzchak, that the reason why Beis Shenolda is asur, because it's like mashkin shazavu. And that's where we ask the contradiction. Wait a second. He says mashkin shazavu is not a problem by ochla, and yet here we see by Beis Shenolda he holds it is a problem. So that's why he says you're right. Machlevas Hashita, you have to say that you have to switch around the opinions. Now, however, as Getinta Medei, once we introduced into classic Talmudic style this contradiction of Rabbi Yehuda, because we wanted to show the way Rabbi Yochanan asked the question, that obviously Rabbi Yochanan held like Rabbi Yitzchak, that the Isra of Beis Shenolda is because of Mashkin Shazavu. Now others are going to give their own answers for this contradiction of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yochanan said, the Machlevas Hashita is Gishpad, the episode, Nish Git with the Girsa. That's what he had to say. Others say, no, we can give you other answers. It's not terrible. Ravina Amar, as we continue on the base, he says, I'll tell you. This Rabbi Yochanan said that you have to switch around the opinions of Rabbi Yehuda, so it shouldn't be a contradiction. No. Lo even like Tevach. You don't have to switch around the opinions. Why not? It is a contradiction. So no, you're reading it wrong. Rabbi Yehuda, in Masechtas Eruvin, when he had said that the Beis Shenolda, and he's trying to show that there's two different kedushas, like we said, that you could make two erevin, and you could fix the trumas and maestris and Beis Shenolda because they're two different kedushas. And he said if it was born on the first one, you could do it on the second one. But we said, but what's with the first day? Why is the first day a problem? That was why he had difficulty. So Rabbi Yehuda was the Devram de Rabbanan Kamlu. Rabbi Yehuda wasn't saying his own opinion there. He was saying, according to you, my disputants, in your opinion, I'm asking, as follows. Lady D said, for me, according to my opinion, you're right. First day Yom Tov is also permitted. What's high? Don't you know my other opinion, Masechta Shabbos? I said that it's not a problem if you have a ochla de ifris, if you have a food item that was absorbed and is coming out. No mashkin shazavu. That was Rabbi Yechon's Shiloh. And I said, you're right, of course he would hold his mutter beishon on the first day, because that's not a problem, mashkin shazavu, because it's a food, it's a liquid, it's a solid, it's a uchla. As the Gemara says, because the uchla de ifris too. And so obviously, if there's no problem about schita, so obviously you have no problem with mashkin shazavu, because the whole problem with mashkin shazavu is because of schita. And we're talking about over here a chicken that's designated for eating purposes. So if it's considered, the chicken's considered as a food item. And the egg that comes out is like a slice off the loaf of bread. There's no schita here. There's no mashkin shazavu. There's no schita. But el ditchu, what Rabbi was telling them was, according to you, my disputants, not only don't you say like me that it's permitted on the first day when it's laid, you hold it's forbidden even on the second day. So although that you hold by the egg that it is included in mashkin shazavu, even my chicken that's we want to use it for eating purposes, you want to tell me that the egg will be about mashkin shazavu? Okay, I don't hold like you like that. I hold it's not about mashkin shazavu. But oigili me as at least agree to me the b'sheni shaya. A chach come halfway, admit to me that at least it's permitted on the second day Yom Tov, because they're shtei kedushas here, because they're two different sanctities. Because one of those days is weekday. So, at least the second day should be permitted, because if yesterday was chol, then for sure it's not a problem. And if today's chol, then it's also not a problem. So, that's what his point was. His point was, forget about my opinion that I hold as Zayin Mashkin Shazav, which I hold mutter even first day. But the second day, Talmud Yom Tov, is not going to be us. It's not, because they're different sanctities. Amalei Rabban the line. Rabban said, no, you're wrong. Kedush Al-Chasi, it's one sanctity. As Rashi explains, the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah is not comparable to other Yom Tovim. Because Rosh Hashanah, unlike the Shnei Yom Tovim Shel Golias that we have in Golis, it's not because of a suffix that it was instituted. Because even when there were courts, with the best, and they decided no suffix, they said this day is Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah, they would still make 2 days Yom Tov if the witnesses came from the Zman of Mincha and onwards, as the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah of Lamed Beis. So it's not to do with suffix. They made it. The courts made it into Rosh Hashanah. Now, obviously, then it's like the terminology that's well known of Yomei. It's like one day. It's one kedusha. So no. If it's late on the first day, it's mashkin shazavu, and then it's going to be usher even on the second day too. Because it's not like suffix chol suffix kodesh and moman shach. One of them is chol, one of them kodesh and should be permitted. No, it's not two kedushas. One kedusha. But again, there's not a contradiction of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was just saying according to their opinion. Rabbi Yehuda for himself, you're right. Rabbi Yehuda even on the first day of Yom Tov. Now, the Gemara brings a third interpretation. Ravina Bereda of Ula Omar, he says, no, says this whole question that was posed by Rabbi Yechonon by Rabbi Yehuda on his own opinion, from the beginning is not a kasha. Because, you don't understand, Hacha over here, we're in the Mishnah Erevin that we were inferring that Rabbi Yehuda holds, that it's only mutter on the second day Yom Tov, the egg was laid, but not on the first day Yom Tov. It's B'tam the Goyla, so I made this Ligabel Beitza. It's too much a chicken that the reason why they have it here on this farm, they only want the eggs from it. No one's shechting this chicken because it's very precious. They want it to lay its eggs. So such a chicken is muktzah on Yom Tov, because Yom Tov you can only use what's a Yom Tov purpose. That would only be if you wanted, there was this from the shechita, from the empire, it's there waiting to be slaughtered, that wouldn't be muktzah. But if it's made to lagav beitzim, so it has no Yom Tov purposes, you're not going to use it to shach. So it's not because of mashkin shazavu. The reason why it's problematic, we had asked the contradiction of Yehuda, well, what do I mean? Mashkin shazavu. So we're saying it's not to do mashkin shazavu. Here the chicken is because it's legadol beitzim. The Yehuda tameh, Yehuda goes according to his reasoning, just like muktzah. As we mentioned on the previous Daf, that Yehuda, and that's why by Yom Tov, we hold Basil is like, that was the first interpretation, is he holds a problem about muktzah. So that's why it's going to be asur on the first day of Yom Tov. Nothing to do with that of mashkin shezavu, because you're right, it's not mashkin shezavu. Like we said in his mission, Masechta Shabbos, it's a ochel de'ifres, it's a food item. It's a problem because of muktzah. Okay, but now the Gemara goes back to the Amiron that we had mentioned regarding, we had 4 interpretations. What was the reason of Beisil in the Mishnah that a Be'er Shanol is going to be asur Yom Tov? We had Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yitzchak. Both of them had said that it's going to be regarding a certain gezer. Either it's gezer mishum peris haneshim, because it's similar to a fruit that falls off a tree, or like a Yitzchak, because it's gezer mishum mashkin shazav, but similar to like when juices seep out of a fruit. But the Gemara asks in the following brisa. The brisa says, Echad be'er shenolda b'Shabbos, whether it's an egg that's laid on Shabbos, v'echad be'er shenolda b'Yom Tov, whether it's an egg that's laid on Yom Tov, not let it move the egg, not to cover, let's say, the opening of a bottle, which the egg would fit that size of the flask. You can't, let's say, stand the egg straight up on its pointy side and lean, let's say, the leg of a bed on that egg. So you can't do that. You can't move the egg. What you could do is, you could turn over a vessel. Let's say you could take a bowl and turn it over the egg, like to shove it, that the egg shouldn't break. Now, as Rashi points out, although the egg itself, you're telling me you can't move, so therefore that's muktzah, but you can move another kli, let's say a bowl, for the purposes of that muktzah egg, which is coming to exclude from Rabbi Yitzchak that he says in Shabbos and Megillah Manav, he holds you can't move a kli for something that itself cannot be moved. And this Bryce is coming to say that you could, but actually Rabbi Yitzchak explains that's talking about if you were moving the kli anyway, but tzarach mekaymai, you need its place. Once you're holding it, then you're allowed to put it down wherever you want to, and then you can put it over the egg. But you wouldn't be able to move it for that egg, because if the egg is moktzah, you can't move something else for it itself. Okay, be that as it may. But the main part, why we bring it in, is for the further part of this brisa. V'seika, now the doubt of this egg, let's say it's doubtful, we're saying this Be'er Shanol is problematic, it's moktzah, now let it move it, and let's say you have a doubt regarding it, so it's going to be forbidden. Now, the assumption of the Gemara right now is, what does it mean, a suffix of this egg? It means, let's say you're not sure if this egg was laid on Yom Tov or was laid on the weekday, it's going to be forbidden on Yom Tov. Now, from this Arva Be'elef, let's say it gets mixed into 1,000 other eggs, Kul Nasr, they're all going to be forbidden, all those eggs will have this Isser of Be'er Shanol B'Yom Tov. Okay, that's the brisa. Says the Gemara like this. Bishlam Rabba, we understand Rabba. The Amma, he said, what was the reason of the Issa of Be'er Shanol B'Yom Tov? He says, he said it's because of, it has to be prepared. And I could understand why, if you have a suffix, if it was laid on Yom Tov, which then means to say it was not prepared because it was from the previous Shabbos, or if it was laid on the weekday, that it would be permitted, I can understand why it would be also, because I was saying it. It's going to be a biblical Isser, as he learned out the halacha of Hachana from a pasuk. Any doubt you have a run biblical law, we go stringently. Fine, I get that. What I don't get, says the Gemara, is Rabbi Yitzchak, the army, they both said, why is a Be'er Shanol asur on Yom Tov? Mishum Gezeira, because of the rabbinic decree, either because of the rabbinic decree of Peris Haneshim, or because of the Gezeira of Mashkin Shazavu, Sveki de Rabbanan he. What do you mean? It's a rabbinic doubt. Because even when it's definitive, even if you know definitely that it was laid on Yom Tov, it's only Gezeira de Rabbanan that's forbidden. So when it's a suffix regarding rabbinic law. So don't you say that whenever it's a doubt regarding rabbinic law, you go leniently? So why would the suffix of the Be'er Shanol to be asur? It only makes sense according to Rabbi. It doesn't make sense according to Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Yosef. So the Gemara says, you're right. That Seifa that's talking about that if it's a suffix, it's going to be asur, is a son suffix treifa. It's talking about the suffix of the egg if it's a treifa. Meaning, we don't know if this egg was laid from a chicken that was a treifa that had a mortal defect. And it's not told by Yom Tov. As Rashi explains, once we were talking about prohibited eggs, we spoke about also another type of prohibited eggs. But when we said suffix, we didn't mean this suffix. We meant a different suffix of eggs. A suffix is of treifa. Was it born from a mother bird that was a treifa? So you must say, wait a second. A good answer, but you have to fit it into the next part of the brisa. Aim a sefer. Beitzah then continued right after and said, if it gets mixed with 1,000 different eggs, so all those eggs are going to be forbidden. So if you say, as we had assumed as a simple understanding of the Beitzah is, that suffix Yom Tov Sabachol, we're talking about the original egg that we were talking about regarding, we have a suffix if it was laid on Yom Tov or not, I could understand the halacha why, if it's mixed into 1,000 eggs, it'll all be asr. You know why? Because I have a dava shesh l'matir. It's something that has a permitted way that you don't have to do bittul for, because you could eat after Yom Tov. It's totally mutter after Yom Tov. The whole problem is only for Yom Tov purposes, because of does it have halacha of muktzah or not? Anything that has permitted, even in 1,000, it's not going to be batal. As Rashi points out, although biblically, really, the law of bittul is 2 to 1, like it says, achiram lahatas, you go after a basic majority of 2 to 1. Rabbanim was stringent, because since it could be permitted at a later point in time, why should we let you eat it in the state of prohibited through bittul? It has matir, and so why should we do any type of bittul? But Eliyam, it's something trivial. But if you say this newfangled interpretation that the Beitzah means to say suffix is going to be usher, it meant suffix treifa, a very different case, but it was talking about eggs also. A treifa egg doesn't have any permitted. There's nothing that's going to happen. There's no way of permitting it. It's a treifa. That's it. It's throw it in the garbage. So then, b'divat l'beruba. So there should be an elevated majority. Why are you telling me even 1,000 is not going to be bottle? You're going to tell me, because be'eh chashuva, no, an egg is considered a significant item. V'lei b'teila, there's another halacha of davar chashuv, is also not bottle. It's significant. You can't see it as nullified. But that would only work halfway. Because this works very well according to the mandama that the Gemara is going to bring later on. Here it's a little bit complicated, which the Gemara itself is going to clarify in a moment what we're talking about. So just hold on. But this makes sense according to the one that says Kol Shadarki Limana Shamino. That there's a Mishnah Masechet Arlo that the Gemara is going to bring that holds that when we say whatever is, when you say the words Kol Shadarki Limana Shamino, it means to say anything that there would be people that would be particular because it's significant, that they sell it only by number, by quantity, because each one is significant, then it's not going to be bottled. An egg also, many people do sell an egg by quantity. A dozen, they sell by the number of eggs. So according to that man, the Amr, it would make sense why you tell me the egg would not be bottled even 1,000, because it's a double chashiv, because there are people that do sell eggs by number. But according to the one who says S, it sounds funny, but it's the words kol and S is the main point here, the machlekes. S, shadar liman shaninu. The word S sounds like no, only if it's designated that there's no one who sells by estimation. They only sell by number. Michael M, what are you going to say? As Rashi points out, eggs quite often are sold by estimation without literally counting them. So why would you tell me a beya treif is going to be usher even 1,000? According to that man, the Amma who holds, has to be specifically only if people counted and not by estimation. An egg is not always sold like that. And if that's the case, then it should be bottled because it's not considered as a davar chashuv. Where do we find this machlek? Is it not? We learn Mishnah Masechet this Arlo. This machlek is it is kol or S, which means to say, is it enough if some people or only if everyone does? What's this machlek? The Mishnah says like this: Misha chavili tilsam. If someone had bundles of fenugreek, which is a type of bean which is used to sweeten the pot. So someone had a bundle of this tilsam, shel klai haker, which it was problematic because it grew in a vineyard. So it was a problem of climb of forbidden mixture of a vineyard. So yidlaku, it has to be burnt, like is the halach of klai haker, like the pasuk says in the Bam Chalbeis, pen tukdesh. The word tukdesh could be read tukat eish, which means you have to burn it in the fire, because it's also bahana. Now, nisavi bacheres, what happens to this bundle of fenugreek that gets mixed with other bundles? And acheres bacheres, and then others with others, which says in Arichas regarding, is it the original or others, but be that as it may cool and yidlaku. They all have to be burnt up in the fire, divrei meir. The Chamarim, they say, no. Yalla be'echad Messiah. If, let's say, this bundle falls into a ratio of 200 permitted ones to this forbidden one, what you do is you take out one bundle, correlating to the one bundle of Issa that fell in. You're going to burn that one bundle, and the rest are going to be permitted. And that's the share of the halach of bittul, of nullification of Kalayim and Arlo, which is a ratio of 200 to 1. As the Mishnah explains, that the reason why your mayor says they all have to be burned, and he doesn't hold that it's going to be halacha bittul, and this is the main opinion that we're discussing over here. Meir said, that which is normally counted, so since it's normally counted, it's considered chashuv, so therefore it's not going to be batal, so therefore it's makadosh. Therefore, it's going to go ahead and make whatever is mixed into it forbidden, because there's no bittul, because it's something that's normally counted. This bundle of fenugreek is something that's normally sold by count, by number, and therefore it's a chashuv thing, so you can't have bittul. They say, no, what are you talking about? All pears in the world are going to be batal. There's only 6 things in the world that are so chashuv that there's not going to be halach of bittul. But everything else, a bundle of fenugreek, of course, can be batal. Kilam says, no, it's not 6, it's actually shiva, 7. Bailen, what are these 7 items? They are goizi perech. Their perech is the name of the location, is the nuts of perech. But imani badan, and also badan is the name of the location of the pomegranates from badan. You have a chabi stumas, you have these closed barrels. These are all chashuv, very chashuv things. The chilchi trodden, these are prickly beets. You have a kilchi kruv, you have these cabbage stalks, which they grow with their leaves very tall, with the cabbage in there itself is like a big like a tree. As you must in Subas and so it's a very chashuv thing. The lasivannus and the Greek gourd, it's like a pumpkin family. What's the 7th one? He says also the loaf of bread that's made by a homeowner. That's also a chashuv thing. That's not going to be bought. Okay, but the Mishnah just explains harola arla. So whatever is from the type of species that grows on a tree, and therefore the laws of arla apply to it, will have arla. In other words, it's going to make whatever it's mixed into forbidden because of arla, because we said these things are very chashuv, these 6, 7 things, and they never batal. So if it applies to the laws of arla, because from the first 3 years, it's going to make the whole mixture arla. And whatever it's fit for the Easter klai, for example, let's say the prickly beets, or the cabbage stalks, or the loaves of bread, they don't grow from a tree. The problem they could have is if they grew in a vineyard. So then klai then it's going to make whatever it's mixed into forbidden as klai again, even in 1,000. That's the end of that Mishnah. Now the fun starts now. Now, on that Mishnah, it was taught in the statement of Rabbi Meir, who he said that yes, the bundle of fenugreek of that tilson is not going to be batal because it's a double chashuv, and he said, oh, because it's something that's counted. We have a machlekes amarim how to define the parameters of his opinion. Rabbi Yochanan, he says, he says, oh, you know what the words were? Specifically that which is only sold by number, like the chavila tilsa. That's where we're going to say that it's always sold by count, never by weight or estimation. And therefore, that is going to be where there's not going to have a lot of bittul. He says, no, kol shadar kedemana sheninu. Anything that the norm is that, not everyone, but as long as there are many people, as long as it's generally sold by count, sometimes by weight or estimation, but since generally sold by count, that's also a chashuv thing. That's also not going to have a lot of bittul. That's what Rabbi Meir said. So I think Gemara concludes its question. Again, it's a very long process, but you understand according to Reb Shimon Lakish that you could explain the previous brayse that said that the egg is not going to be batal. And again, if you recall, we said we're talking about a beya treifa. You could say that the brayse is like Reb Meir, because there are many who sell eggs by count, and therefore the eggs is going to be chashiv. They're going to be considered as a davar shebeminion, and therefore it's not going to be batal, even by beya treifa. Even though it's not Mishal Matin, but it's a double chashuv because it's called Shadak in the Monash. What are you going to say? Why is a treifa egg that you're trying to explain to me that to answer Rabbi Yisrael and Yitzchak that it's not talking about the case of Suffolk if it was Chol or Yom Tov, because according to them it's rabbinic and you would have to go Suffolk Rabban Kula. So you told me, oh, it's a Suffolk treifa egg. So then we said, wait a second. So why wouldn't it be batal in the Elef? Oh, you tell me because it's chashiv. Oh, but that would help only if you hold kol shadak lemanis. But it wouldn't help for eshadak lemanis. So why would the egg not be batal in 1,000? So Papa says, I'll tell you why. It says, Hai Tana, the Tana of the previous brayse is not Reb Meir. You're right, according to Reb Meir, according to Rabbi Yochanan, it would not be, it would be batal. Rather, it's Tana de litra katziyasu. It's the Tana of the brayse we're going to shortly quote regarding the litra, which is it's a measurement of the dried pressed fig cakes. The Amad that Tana says, Kol davar shebeminyan, anything that's counted, not only S, anything that is at times counted, even regarding rabbinic law, meaning, for example, this litra, this measurement of these dry pressed fig cakes, we're talking about trumas, the trumas of peiros, unlike grapes and olives and grain, is only rabbinic. So we're going to be talking about dini d'Rabbanan, trumas d'Rabbanan, and still that Tana is going to say loy batal. It's not going to be nullified, as we're going to shortly explain. And it's that Tana who says that Beitzah, that was saying that the beya of that suffix treifa is not going to be batal, because even by D'Rabbanan, he says, and even by something that's kol shadar kilamanis, he says that. So B'kolshkin, so therefore all the more so regarding what we're discussing in that Beitzah that we quoted before of the beya treifa, as we explained it, which is b'deiraisa, that's biblical, for sure it's not going to be batal, as long as there are many who go ahead and sell it by counting. What is this Tana? It's not like we learned, which is either a Beitzah or it's a Mishnah, like somewhat of a version of Masechtas Trumas. The Beitzah says, litra ketzias. Ketzias refers to the figs that dried up in the field. Now, the reason why it's called ketzias is because they would actually cut it with a miktsaya. A miktsaya is a type of a vessel that was made for the purposes of cutting the uktzei, very similar word, the stems of the figs. Then they would go ahead and press them into a round vessel, which would stick them together. It became like a cake of cheese. And that was called igule devela. We have this all throughout Shas. The igule is the round cakes of the devela, of the figs. Now, when they would come to sell it, so you come to the market, you come to the shuk, you see this round cake of figs, but no one's buying the whole cake necessarily. So he goes and he separates it with like a type of a tool where he cuts slices out of it and he sells it with a weight of a litra. That's this litra ketzias that we're discussing. So you have this litra ketzias, shedirasa al pi eagle, which was pressed on this vessel called the eagle. And the reason why it's called the eagle is because they would make it eagle and they would make it round. Now, but the any there be'ezel eagle dirasa. The problem is the guy doesn't know on which round vessel he pressed this litra of ketzias. Now he knows it is by the mouth of the vessel and not inside, but he doesn't know on which eagle did he press this litra of ketzias. Or another similar case, al pi chavis. He put it on the opening of a barrel. He doesn't know on which barrel did he press it. Or another similar case, al pi kiveres. He put it onto a basket. He doesn't know on which basket did he press this litra of ketzias. So we have a machlekes. We have actually the machlekes is in the machlekes. We have two versions of what the machlekes is, which is he says that there's a machlekes Rabbi Eliezer and Yeshua, and his version of the machlekes is like this. Rabbi Eliezer, he says that even though it's a little bit complex, and all these different opinions, even though there's many litras, there's all these dried figs that are pressed in over here. Although the lower litras are not really part of this suffix, this doubt of dimua, of this mixture of this truma litra ketzias of all together, because you put on the top, still they're going to combine the lower ones with what's on the mouth of the vessel of all these igulin. You have many of these round vessels, and you have this litra ketzias of this rabbinic truma of the dried figs, and it's on the mouth of whatever vessel it is. So really the bottom should not help. But he says, Rabbi Eliezer says, as we continue to Daf Yomi, he says, if you don't have 100 mouths of all these, let's say you have all these vessels in your store, so you would say you consider the mouths as part of the suffix, because you put on the mouth of one of these vessels. So even if you don't have 100 of all these opening of the barrels of all your barrels in your store, to have enough to nullify that isser of 100 to 1, which is the ratio of what you need to have for the laws of trumais, it's okay. Roines al yoines, you're going to view the litras that are on the top by the opening of the barrel. Kilehin perudos, very interesting wording, and Rashi has to explain to us what this really means. You view it as if it was separated from the mouth, as if you mixed it into the bottom, comes out, it's all one big suffix, one big dot of dimua, and then you're going to combine them together, as if it's all mixed, And so what's on the bottom is going to elevate and nullify together what's on the top, with the litra that's really on the opening of the barrel. Now Rashi explains why we're doing this, because since Trumas of Peiros, which is what we're talking about, the priest, is only rabbinic, so we were lenient regarding the laws of bittul of this truma. So therefore, although really the suffix is only on the the pad, the mouths of these barrels, we're going to consider what's on the bottom as part of the mixture, and if you have enough from the whole thing, the top and the bottom, and all the different barrels together, it's going to nullify the ratio 100 to 1. That's one opinion in this opinion of Rabbi Shloimy, he says, no. In Yeshem Meya Pumin, if there are at least 100 opening of barrels that are of heter, besides this one barrel that you have the isra of this lit, you can see is on it, then it'll be nullifying the ratio of 100 to 1. But then if you don't have 100 mouths, all the mouths of all the barrels that you have there in your store, they're all going to be forbidden. And we're not going to have the bottoms help to nullify the mouth, because it's not part of the suffix. It's not mixed in. You know it's on the top. How can you mix in the bottom without nullify? It's not mixed in. It's not part of the doubt. It's not part of that equation. Now, Vashalayim return. Obviously, what's on the bottom is going to be permitted, because we know it's not on the bottom. That's Remeir's version of the Machlekes Rebbe Eliezer and Rabbi Shua. Okay. Version number 2, which is the main point we're getting to. Yehuda, he says, no, Remeir, that's not the Machlekes Rebbe Eliezer and Rabbi Shua. I'll tell you their version. It's more chamer. It's more stringent. It says like this. Rabbi Eliezer, his version is like this. Rabbi Eliezer says, in Yeshem Meya Pumin, essentially, Rabbi Yehuda is saying, Rabbi Eliezer is what Remeir said was Rabbi Yeshua, which is more severe. We're going one notch higher. Rabbi Eliezer is the one who says, he was the more lenient interpretation. He says, in Yeshem Meya Pumin, if you have 100 other mouths to nullify that one mouth, then Yallah is going to be nullified. Then Lav, you don't have 100 mouths. And the mouths are going to be forbidden, and the bottoms are going to be permitted. That's what Rabbi Yeshua said in the first version. Rabbi Shloimy, he says, and this is the Tana we're actually getting to, when we're trying to say who's the Tana of Litra Ketzias, that we're saying for Rabbi Yechonah to answer who's the Tana in the previous Beitzah was said of a Safek Treifa. He says, Afili Yeshem Sholish Meis Pumin. He says, no, forget about it. You could have 300 other barrels with their mouths opening over there, and they're all part of the Safek. Lo Yalu. They're not going to elevate and nullify even that one single barrel. And the reason for that is, and this is the kicker, is since the mouth of a vessel is a davar sheyesh by minyan, it's something that you count its own significant quantity, so it's not going to have a nullification. Even rabbinic law of this lit you can see, so it's only truma d'Rabbanan, and therefore it's not going to be nullified. Now, there is a case of drasa be'igul. If let's say you pressed it into a cake of dried figs, any day of the eagle drasa, and you don't know in which dried fig cake that you pressed it into, then Divrei Kol Yala, then everyone's going to agree that's going to be nullified. Says Divrei Kol, everyone. Didn't you say this is the Machlekes? So my papa said, no, Hachakam, this is what we're saying. You just said you pressed it inside the eagle, in the round cake itself, which now you don't recognize it anymore, because now it is pressed in. For any day, but is a Malcolm eagle dress, you don't know where in the dried fig cake you pressed it into. If it's on the northern part of the eagle, Iladremo to the southern part. So now it's not bas minyan, it's not something that's counted, it's not even recognizable, it's somewhere all inside. That's Divrei Kol Yal, then everyone agrees is going to be nullified, even according to Yeshua. But as Rashi explains what the Gemara's conclusion was, so who is the Tana that we had said before that said that if you have a Be'er Treifa, a suffix of the Be'er Treifa is not going to be bottled, if you have the Be'er Treifa, that the Dra Isser, it's not going to be bottled. That was Rabbi Yehuda's version, the second version, according to Yeshua, who he said that anything that would sometimes be counted, even regarding rabbinic law, is not going to be bottled. So, if by rabbinic law it's not going to be bottled, for sure not by biblical law, like the case of the Be'er Treifa, so we come full circle. So now we have explained why it's not difficult under Yitzchak and Rabbi Yisrael. We had asked a question from a Beitzah that said, if you have a suffix on this Be'er, if it's a problematic or not, we said that it's going to be usher. We said, what do you mean? Suffix. According to Rav, it makes sense because Deraisa, L'chumra. According to Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Yisrael, that says that it's a suffix to Rabbanon, because it's Gezerah, a suffix to Rabbanon Sheli L'kul. They said, no, it's not talking about that. It's talking about suffix of Shreifa, different case. So, but wait a second, then you have the next halacha that's problematic. Then why I feel the Elf Lai Batal? If it's talking about that of Yom Tov, I understand. It would be Davar Shesh Matir. Davar Shesh Matir, I feel the Elf Lai Batal. If you tell me suffix Shreifa, then why isn't it Batal? So that's what the Gemara said. Because it's Davar Chashav. Davar Chashav would not be Batal. Whoa, Davar Chashav, egg Davar Chashav, that's only according to the one like Rish Lakish who holds Esha Dark Limon the Shaninu. Kol Shadak Limon. But you don't think Rabbi Yechonen's S has to be specifically, well, eggs not specifically sold by account. Some do, some don't. So we said, you're right, Rabbi Yechonen telling you it's going like the Tan of Litra Ketzias. Well, he's so machmer that he says, and this is Rabbi Yeshua's version, the Rabbi Yehuda's version of Rabbi Yeshua, that he says, by this case of the Litra Ketzias, that even when you have 300 other mouths of barrels, that one barrel is not going to be bottled, because since it's its own unit, it's not going to be bottled, even by rabbinic law, so for sure by biblical law, it's not going to be bottled, and again, therefore, that's why it's not going to be bottled. Thank you to anything.